guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, the Bright Side Girl, and today we're talking about my top 10 favorite audiobooks of 2019. Just in case you guys missed it, I posted my top 10 favorite physical reads of 2019 yesterday. I'll link that up here in the cards for you guys so you can check it out. I am more excited about this video because while I really loved a lot of the books I talked about yesterday, a couple of these are like my die-hard soul touched books. I'm not sure if it's because they're audiobooks and I get that added element of voices and sound effects, or if it's just because I picked better audiobooks to listen to, or if it's because I listen to more audiobooks, but these are the ones that I am like the most excited to talk to you guys about. So just like yesterday, I won't be talking about exclusively new releases. I'm just gonna be talking about my favorite reads that I read this year, and I read a lot of backlist books. Only like 1 or 2 new reads on this list. Also, like yesterday, they're not going to be in any particular order, but we got a lot to get through, so we're going to jump right in. So I'm going to be including full series in this video. So first we're going to talk about The School for Good and Evil. This is the second book because I don't own the first one. I actually don't own a lot of the books I'm talking about, so I'm excited that I at least have this one. So I'm talking about books 1 and 2 for this. I haven't finished books 3 or carried on with the series. So this is a middle grade series I have been wanting to read for forever, and I finally got to it. It's about a school for good and a school for evil in a highly fantastical setting, kind of got Hogwarts vibes. And there are 2 girls, Sophie and Agatha, and Sophie is convinced she's going to the school for good, and that Agatha is going to go for the school for evil. There's like some kind of wizard or some guy that comes in at night and picks one kid from every town and takes them to these schools, and they wind up getting swapped. And so you're following them and you're doing that whole school setting where they're learning like how to be evil and how to be good, and it's so great. I loved it so much. The second book was way different than I expected it to be. I still really liked it. Interesting topics in it, which were kind of surprising, but I super enjoyed this. They're really long, but the audiobooks were super, super great. I can't remember the narrator for these. I'll link all the narrators like right here below me so you guys can check them out. So I really love this one, and I can't wait to continue on with the series. My next book I'm going to talk about is The Mermaid's Daughter. Can't remember the author's name. It'll be up here, and the narrators will be down here as well. So this is an adult mermaid book, which I'm always leery of because a lot of times they'll have like a mermaidy title, and then it'll just be like a metaphor, and it'll really be about like surviving cancer. And this one starts out with our lead character having something really wrong with her, like her vocal cords and her hands, and I was like, oh no. But it was so amazing and surprising. Our lead character is a actress, and she's a opera singer and actor, and so you get a lot of that element in there as well. Her father writes operas, and she kind of helps him with that, and she has this amazing girlfriend who is very loving and kind and puts up with a lot of her selfishness, and you're kind of like following their relationship, but also her relationship with her dad, and then this fantastical mermaidy element that's like totally unexpected. It has so many layers of goodness in it that I just, oh, it was so good, and the audiobook's amazing. I think I'll definitely be re-listening to this one next year, and I need to get my hands on it because it's one of my favorites and probably one of the most underrated books. It is adult, but most of the subjects are okay for young adults. I'm not sure if they'll fully enjoy it as much as an adult will, but if you like mermaids, you gotta check it out because it's one of the best. Next up, we're gonna talk about Austenland by Shannon Hale. This was one of my favorite listens of the year. Again, narrator will be posted down here below. I love this so much. So this is also an adult book. It's set in modern times, and our lead character is, I think she's like 27 or something, and she's kind of panicking about not being married yet. She's got this obsession with Jane Austen, specifically Pride and Prejudice and Mr. Darcy, and everyone keeps telling her like, you can't put all these men up to these standards, like you're being totally unrealistic, you're never gonna find somebody. And her grandmother, I think, dies, or her aunt dies or something, and leaves her tickets to go to Austenland, which is in England somewhere, and it's basically this big manor that recreates Jane Austen times and scenarios, and she has to go there and basically be in a Jane Austen novel, and it's this whole like immersive resort experience, and it was so great. I loved it so much. It was just awesome. The second book is even better. It's not following the same character, it's following a different character that goes there, and she has like a murder mystery experience, which I want to talk about in my fall reads. I really loved this one. I listened to it while I was gardening. Again, I want to reread this next year because it was just so fun and like fluffy and happy, and just, I don't know, you could imagine everything in your head. I really enjoyed the movie as well, and yeah, it was great. I can't wait to read more Shannon Hale. Next up, I want to talk about His Heart and Other Body Parts by Ira Bloom. The narrator's down here below. I loved this. I had such a good fall, like spooky reads time. Most of the books I loved were physical reads. I talked about them yesterday, but this was the first fall spooky read book I read. It was recommended to me by a subscriber because I love Frankenstein and Frankenstein retellings. This is a very loose Frankenstein retelling. It just has like elements of Frankenstein in here, but there are witchy sisters, there's a talking cat, there's vampires, and it is just fun. It's just fun. There's a boy that's been like put back together, and it's set in our time, and it was magical and Halloweeny, but it wasn't scary, but it was like spooky and creepy and just in light amounts, and it was hilarious. It was so funny. Our narrator did such an amazing job doing all the different voices. I was super impressed, and I loved the sister vibes and the witchy vibes, and it was like the perfect fall read. It was amazing. I loved it so much, and I need to purchase it. Next up, I want to talk about Sherwood by Megan Spooner. Also one of my favorite reads. Megan Spooner has become one of my new favorite authors. I physically read Hunted, her book, Beauty and the Beast retelling. Loved it. And then I listened to this one on audio. I knew I had to because it was a Robin Hood reimagining. So this one is actually following Maid Marian, and she has to kind of fulfill Robin Hood's legacy. And it was so good. It was so unexpected. The love story was great. Just all of the elements of it. Her writing is so amazing. I can't wait to read her sci-fi series she has a couple, but her one that she wrote with Amy Kaufman, because I love Illuminate from Amy Kaufman, and I love Megan Spooner's writing style, and just everything was amazing. Our narrator was complete perfection. This was a super long audiobook. It was like 14 hours. I just could not get enough of it. Again, I want to reread it already. I think she's got another retelling coming out next year that I'm really excited about, but we'll talk about that in January. So I loved this so much. If you like Robin Hood, if you like feministic retellings in the best way possible, check this out. It was just so good. It gave me all of the bubbly feels, like love and sadness and well written, and it was so good. Next up, we're going to talk about Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. Also one of my new favorite authors. I talked about her book Night Film yesterday. So this is her YA thriller of sorts. It's kind of got a Groundhog Day feel. It's really hard to describe. It's about a girl and her group of friends and how they kind of got broken up apart because her boyfriend supposedly committed suicide, and that kind of just made their group crumble, and she decides to like get back together with them and kind of hang out with him, and they go to this specific house that's like a mansion that they always go to, and they get this creepy visitor that tells them that they're in a Neverworld Wake. And I don't really want to explain what that is, but we've got a little bit of a Groundhog Day of like reliving situations over again. We got some like quantum physics stuff, trying to figure out what the best move is. Not like super repetitive because you get different stories, and also they're allowed to like kind of change situations, and I don't know how to explain it other than that it was great. And if you like those kind of like books that make you think and try and figure things out, it was great. It wasn't very thrillery, but it was very mysterious, and I really, really loved it. It was such a good one for Halloween. Her narrator was totally awesome. It was great. Next up is Darkest Part of the Forest. I think this is the first audiobook I've listened to this year, or one of them, in January, so it's stuck with me. I am not including Cruel Prince and Wicked King on here. I just didn't like them quite as much as these other books. I really liked them, but I wasn't obsessed with them, and I liked this one better. Like, honestly, I listened to it first, and I thought it was so great. It's kind of it's not necessarily a prequel, but it's set in the Cruel Prince world in earlier times. Like, it's still very modern, but we're in this town, and the town has just accepted that there are fae, and that the fae will like do things to them and like take their kids and like all this stuff, and you kind of follow all these rules. And there is this prince that is in a coffin. He's a fae prince in a coffin, or boy with horns, and he has just been in a coffin for years, and the kids go and like play around him in the forest, and then they make up stories about him and stuff. And it's about our lead character and her brother, and kind of their connection, but also their connection with this mysterious boy. And I don't want to say a lot else, but if you like magical woods and family and friendships, but also romance and adventure and feminism and everything, oh, it was so good. This is one of Holly Black's most underrated stories. I think this was so much better than Cruel Prince, and I really did like Cruel Prince, but this was just really special, and I really loved it. I love Holly Black's writing. Next up is Red Rising, one of my all-time favorite series now. So I read the first trilogy. The next part of the series continues on in the same world. So this is an adult sci-fi book. It is about a teenager, but it is adult. It's very hard to describe. It's a sci-fi world. It's set mostly on Mars, but you're getting a lot of other like planets involved as well. It's got a dystopian vibe to it. It's honestly got a Hunger Games vibe to it because we have a school setting and it's brutal and there are different factions and we're all sorted out by colors, and so the reds are like the more lowly colors and the golds are like the more wealthy and like powerful colors. It's kind of about breaking down those different sectors and the different rules of power and like fighting the man, and it's got all these sci-fi elements. But there's an amazing school element to this. There is love, there is action, there is a ragtag team of characters, brutalness, there is twists and turns and surprises. I was literally listening to this audiobook. It's like 21 hours. So fast. I listened to it in less than a week. I would like be cooking and I'd like turn my head around the kitchen to be like, oh my god, I can't believe that just happened. So well written, absolutely fantastic. This is by Pierce Brown. Our narrator is Gerard something right here. So amazing, one of my all-time favorite narrators. He also narrates Alice in Wonderland, apparently, that I need to listen to. I loved it so much. He did so many different accents, like British and Scottish and women and everything, and it was so good. And all three of the audiobooks were like over 20 hours, and I listened to them brutally fast. I'm really upset I haven't continued on with the series yet because we're following similar characters set in the future, and I'm so excited for it. And it's one of my brother's favorite reads as well. Definitely has some like more intense, brutal scenes, not as much sexual content, more like brutal graphic scenes. So just kind of keep this in mind. So if you're not of an appropriate age, you might need to wait a little bit because it is kind of brutal in the battle scenes and things like that. But it was great. I loved it. And next we're going to talk about Fate of the Fallen by Kel Kaden. Here's our narrator right here. This was just a random last minute throw in. This was a new release for 2019. This was my favorite new release of the year. One of my new favorite fantasy series. Cannot wait for the next book. I had the same feelings about this almost that I did Red Rising. This is set in a fantasy world, and there are two characters mainly that you're following. You've got the kind of chosen one trope with these two best friends, and the one best friend, he's like charming and handsome and everyone wants to marry him and everyone loves him and everyone thinks he's gonna like save the kingdom and save this town and all this stuff, and he has to go on a journey to kind of figure out how to do that, to save it from all these like magical beings and things like that. And then his best friend decides to kind of tag along, and things get kind of turned on their head, and it's great. I don't want to tell you part of the twist because it is so brilliant. This was so funny. It was such a funny fantasy book, but also like serious, and it was twisted. Everything that you have with all of our tropes was like twisted around, and it was so great. And there were gods in here that were talking about the humans while they were doing things, and we've got witches, trolls, and prophets and everything. And if you love fantasy, this is like a must read. It was so easy to read. It was so fast. It was such a fast audiobook, and it's just like, you know, a journey. It's got like those Lord of the Rings vibes, and it was so good. I loved it. I'm gonna make my husband listen to this one next year because it's great, and I need to know when the second book's coming out because there's no date for it yet. And I'm like literally dying. Like dying. And then the last book series I'm going to talk about is Scythe, Thunderhead, and the Toll. This might be my favorite series ever. So I listened to Scythe last year with my husband Jeff. It took a million years because we listened to things slowly together. And then we listened to Thunderhead early in January, and we are currently listening to the Toll right now. I actually re-listened to this first two in the series. I'm including this mainly because Thunderhead, hands down favorite book of the year so far. And then the Toll that we're currently listening to, I think is gonna beat that. I'm really upset that we're not done yet. I just can't even explain to you how much I love this. I talked about it last year in my top 10 as well. So this is set in a futuristic world. It's like 2090 or something. And we have solved everything. We've solved hunger and dying and death and disease, and even if you get hit by a car, we know how to like bring you back to life. We have these nanites in place inside of us that control your like emotions so you don't get too stressed out, and also like if you get overheated and balance everything out, and no one ever dies. Well, because of that, we have to put in place these scythes, and scythes are basically like grim reapers that have to kill people to decrease the surplus population, because if no one ever dies, then we just have more and more people and you just don't have enough resources. There's also a like not robot kind of, but like we have this thing called the Thunderhead, which is kind of like the cloud, like it's jokingly a twist on the cloud, and that's where all the information is stored, but it kind of also oversees everything, so it's kind of like a god robot. And I don't know how to explain it. I'm doing a terrible job. It's following two scythe apprentices, so we're following Rowan and Citra, and they are apprenticing to be scythes, and neither of them really want to, and they're learning like all of the importance of like how to choose and to be ethical and to be kind, but also to do your job. And I just can't even explain how much level of detail is here. This series makes you think so hard because you're like, oh my gosh, I never thought about, like, if we didn't die, this would happen and this would happen. And then people don't have as much joy because they don't think they're gonna die, so they don't appreciate the little things, and they have multiple sets of kids and they can set their ages back. So if they start to look super old, they can set it back to where they look young again, and so they get remarried, and oh, it's so good. It's so good. I think this might be my favorite series of all time. I'll let you guys know after I finish the Toll. I'll probably be talking about it in January, but oh my god, I'm just completely obsessed, and if I haven't convinced you to read it yet, you got to. It starts slow though. It starts slow because there's a lot of world building, and the narrator is absolutely fantastic, Greg Tremblay, but he is slow, so you need to speed him up to 1.4 or 1.6, and you just have to let the first part of this book, you just have to let yourself absorb the world and get in the information, and then things just take twists and turns, and it's great. It's one of my all-time favorites. Hey you guys, my battery's about to die, so we're gonna end that video here. Those are my top 10 favorite audiobooks of 2019, some of my all-time favorites. I'm really excited for next year. Let me know if you guys love audiobooks too, and I will see you guys next time on The Bright Side. Bye!